I pulled up to the Greyhound Depot right after dusk on a Tuesday that didn't feel like it was mine at all. The structure hunkered down on Millbrook's eastern outskirts, in a town fading away so gradually that no one could say exactly when it had given up the ghost. Just two routes still chugged through past midnight. The 1247 heading to Harrisburg and the 215 coming from who knows where. That would plenty to warrant one live person on duty for the overnight hours. And that person was me. Now. Cash up front. No resume scrutiny. No prying into the blanks on my work record. Admitting how much those perks meant to me was something I avoided, even in my own head. There were pursuits I wasn't chasing and memories I was actively shoving aside. A graveyard shift at this overlooked bus station struck me as the perfect spot to keep them all interred. The depot manager, Vic, a guy whose grip resembled clutching a glove stuffed with chilled change, walked me through the place in about 10 minutes flat. The lounge area featured 40 plastic seats fastened to linoleum likely laid down during the Carter era. The repair garage held tools older than dirt, reeking of oil mixed with some cloyingly spoiled odor I couldn't place. The loading platform was a vast concrete expanse lit by buzzing sodium lamps that trailed off into the gloom where the boundary fence melted into tangled underbrush. Last stop. The dispatch booth, basically an overblown storage space with a workstation, a radio, a coffee pot encrusted from years of neglect, and a ledger that creaked open like splintering antique bones. Your job, Vic explained, is to ensure the buses stick to their schedules. The emphasis on schedules came out like a warning. Record every inbound. Note every outbound. Respond if Central Dispatch hails you. Secure the site at 6. He was retreating out the door by then. Questions? Plenty crossed my mind, but his rigid posture signaled he wasn't fielding any. Once he was gone, quiet draped the whole setup like a fine layer of grit. I spotted the initial guidelines in under 5 minutes. A glossy corporate sheet affixed next to the radio with faded adhesive tape, titled __, quote, _5, __, it covered basics. Keep platform illumination active throughout shift hours. Document all scheduled bus arrivals without delay. Stay in touch via radio with headquarters. Guide any passengers needing help to the assigned lounge spots. Alert the daytime overseer to repair needs. Routine fare. Broad to the point of irrelevance, yet narrow enough to pin fault on you later. But rummaging in the desk for a functional pen uncovered the other set. Scribbled on the reverse of a outdated timetable, creased into a compact wad, and jammed beneath instructions for a long-gone radio unit. The sheet bore smudges, grease at one end, a crusty brownish mark along the base. The script was tight and hasty, as if dashed off amid tremors. __, quote _6 __. I scanned it 2 times, then a third. Right away, the directives clashed at their core. Lights always versus blackout window. Track every vehicle versus overlook the punctual ones. Depend on the gear versus doubt it all. Perched at the workstation, I eyed both documents, hunting for a sensible angle. Perhaps the scrawled version was relic, the ravings of a jittery ex-worker scrapped by updated company standards, or a prank to rattle the rookie. The overhead bulb flickered. And during that brief blackout, the air chilled by 5 degrees. As it hummed back on, I chose my path. Stick to the printed mandates, the official ones from the bosses, not some spectral night owl's whispers. I refolded the note and tucked it away again. Through the glass panes, the platform lamps glowed firm and fierce, holding the shadows at bay. My wristwatch read 9:47 p.m. The lounge timepiece, glimpsed from the booth entrance, showed 9:40. The desktop machine's display, flickering awake with a gurgling noise, indicated 9:54. 3 timepieces, 3 conflicting reads. I brushed it off. Aging structure, wiring glitches. No one had synced the clocks in ages. That was standard here. Still, I couldn't dispel the sense that I was at some kind of junction where the paths diverged just enough, each leading to a future that seemed identical only from afar. The radio hissed with interference. I went to grab it, then paused. The static had this eerie rhythm, ebbing and flowing like labored breaths, pulling my thoughts back to that scribbled note tucked away in the drawer. If the radio addresses you personally before you give your ID, stay silent. The noise droned on without forming words. I withdrew my hand. Beyond the windows, the evening's initial bus swung off the rural highway and onto the depot's entrance ramp. Its beams sliced the blackness like probing eyes. I flipped open the logbook to note the arrival. But the sheet was crammed with notes in script eerily close to my own, chronicling incidents from later in the shift. 12:47 a.m. Bus 4471 on schedule. Passengers unloaded. 12:51 a.m. 2:15 a.m. Bus 8823 pulled in. 3 riders stepped off. Departed 2:20 a.m. 3:33 a.m. Maintenance alert for Incident C. My fingers trembled as I flipped ahead, hunting for empty space. The vehicle eased to the curb with a pneumatic sigh. The driver avoided glancing my way. Nobody exited. Nobody boarded. 4 minutes passed before it rumbled off. I left the log untouched. I dreaded seeing if my script would align with those pre-written lines. The darkness outside carried an indefinable weight, caught somewhere between anticipation and amnesia, akin to lingering in a space you'd vacated without recalling how you entered. I settled behind the dispatch console, forcing attention on the night's familiar pulses. The vending machine's low buzz from the lounge, the erratic ticks of the discordant timepieces, the structure's sporadic creaks as it adjusted. At 11:23 by my wristwatch, though the wall unit claimed 11:16, the radio burst into activity. Night dispatch. This is Central. Verify the platform's open now. Acknowledge. The tone was routine, detached, scripted. Yet they'd labeled me night dispatch without my call sign, and that __quote _8__ implied repetition. My thumb hovered over the transmit key. Those penned warnings bubbled up from memory, emerging like debris from murky depths. If the radio calls you by name before you've identified yourself, don't answer. But it wasn't my name, just my role. I keyed the mic. Greyhound Depot, Millbrook Station. Platform clear, nothing to flag. Feedback buzzed back. Then quiet, followed by a whisper I nearly overlooked. Copy. Good you got through now. The line went dead. I fixed on the device for a solid 3 minutes, parsing the exchange, rationalizing it away. Yet those phrases lodged in me like icy weights. Now, got through. as though prior shifts, failed starts, alternate unfoldings of this evening existed where I hadn't survived. I had to act, to tackle something routine and grounding. A patrol of the grounds seemed right. Inspect the lounge, the loading zone, the repair shed. Build a pattern. Remind myself this was mere employment, a structure, an ordinary watch. The lounge hit me odd right away. All 40 seats vacant, yet the space didn't ring hollow. The atmosphere clung heavy, infused with the echo of recent company, residual heat and aura like fogged breath on a pane. A paper lay draped over one seat, open to the puzzle section. A few answers scratched in with blue ink. No one had come inside since my arrival. That prior bus had been a ghost run. I lifted the sheet. The header read tomorrow's date. Sensation drained from my grip. I let it fall and retreated to the office, eyes locked on the lounge as if it could morph in an instant, reorder into logic. The wall dial read 11:51. My watch, 11:47. The gap had widened. Safe in the control room, I sought anchors in the tangible, the logbook, documented sequences of verified moments. I spread it to the active spread, staring at lines mimicking my hand, forecasting the unpassed. I scanned deliberately. 11:15 p.m. Shift commenced. Systems operational. But I'd clocked in at 9:30, already 2+ hours deep. 11:47 p.m. Inspected lounge. Signs of fresh use. Paper from November 14th. November 13th was now, and I'd scanned the lounge at 11:47 mere moments prior. My breath caught. The note pressed on. 12:03 a.m. Backup staff showed. Challenged schedule. See attached. I glanced at my watch. 11:52 p.m. I had just 11 minutes before another person arrived to argue over some shift I'd never heard of. I ought to have bolted right then. Walked away, hopped into my car, and driven off until Millbrook shrank to nothing behind me. But this gig was essential. I craved the paycheck, the solitude, the freedom from prying eyes. Even more, a nagging curiosity pulled me in. What exactly went down at 12:03? Those 11 minutes flew by as I rummaged through the office, hunting for clues about the logbook, the mismatched clocks, those notes in my own script detailing my every move. Tucked in the bottom drawer under a pile of outdated route timetables, I uncovered a file marked Incident Reports Archive. The latest entry was from 8 months back. Employee, Marcus Teague. Incident date, March 7th. Summary, worker described severe time confusion and overlapping shift duties. Discovered unconscious in the maintenance area after hours. Doctors couldn't pinpoint the cause. He quit shortly after. 5 other files stretched back over 3 years, all under varied employee names. Each one echoed the same issues: confusion, repeating recollections, odd time jumps. Every report ended the exact same way. No breach of rules. No additional steps needed. At 12:03 by my watch, though the computer read 12:09, the depot door swung open. Footsteps echoed across the waiting room floor, clunky boots on linoleum. Then a guy framed himself in the office entry, mid-40s, grease-smeared overalls, lugging a battered metal toolbox like it had been through hell. He froze at the sight of me, his face flashing bewilderment, annoyance, and a flicker of familiarity. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. "I'm the night dispatcher. Started tonight. Vic brought me on." He dropped the toolbox with a solid thud. "That can't be right. I'm the fresh face. Began yesterday. Vic said I'd handle night solo." We locked eyes. "What's your name?" I said. "Ray Costas, maintenance." "And you?" I gave him mine. He fished a crumpled, ink-smudged sheet from his pocket, hand-scribbled. From my spot across the room, even inverted, I could see it diverged from the formal list and the one I'd dug up in the drawer. Ray drawled, taking his time. Ray perched on the desk's corner, weariness etching his features. My instructions warn against picking up the radio past midnight. To brush off any bus pulling in ahead of schedule. To seal the waiting area in bad weather, passengers or not. He eyed me. "What about yours?" I fished out the two versions, the official laminated sheet and the drawer find, and we spread them alongside his. 3 sets of rules, clashing on at least a dozen specifics. "Jesus," Ray grumbled. "We're both screwed, huh?" Beyond the window, the platform lamp stuttered in a rhythm that seemed intentional. The radio hissed to life. My watch read 12:17. The computer, 12:29. Through the door, the waiting area clock displayed 12:08. Which time's the truth? I wondered aloud. Ray scanned the clocks, then me. Could be all of them. Over the following 20 minutes, Ray and I pieced together a chronology that held water. It felt like fitting jigsaw bits from mismatched sets, each revealing bits of scenes that matched yet didn't quite align. Per Ray, he'd signed on Monday. He'd pulled his debut shift solo last night. Vic had mentioned the day before that a maintenance hand had bailed without warning, leaving an urgent spot. Ray had his personal bay key, dedicated radio channel, and distinct maintenance journal unlinked from dispatch logs. In my version, I'd started yesterday. Tonight marked my opener. Vic had explained the night dispatch role sat empty for 2 weeks. Our stories couldn't both stand, yet neither could be fabrication. We were both right there, flesh and blood. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 30, underscore, underscore, I pressed. Ray shook no. I pointed to the entries, the ones mimicking my script. Documenting the night's twists before they'd unfolded. His expression went neutral, guarded. Ray drew a smoke from his pack, stared, then pocketed it. We lingered in quiet for a beat. Ray and I suddenly noticed how the office shifted with him there, as if the room was juggling 2 mismatched layers of itself, blending unevenly. The air carried a faint chill in spots, warmer in others based on your position. Shadows stretched at odd tilts. Quote 36, quote? I remarked. Quote 37. Quote Ray's features hardened. What exactly did they mention? They inquired whether the platform was free this round. Mentioned relief that I'd survived. Ray rose abruptly and began striding back and forth. My guidelines are crystal clear on that front. Ignore calls after midnight since it's not central on the line. It's another entity. Testing if you're persisting? He paused. Persisting how? Still yourself? Still present? Still authentic, maybe. He fished out his list of rules once more. He indicated a clause I'd overlooked earlier. It notes that radios bridge across shifts. Even those in the past are ahead. Timelines blur. Events from tomorrow could ring you now. Echoes from last night might reply. I recalled the logbook, those notations predating the actual incidents. These night shifts. You reckon they're unfolding in parallel? Layers stacking atop one another. I suspect this depot defies a single timeline. I believe an incident shattered the temporal flow within these walls. Rather than repair it, they adapted, devised protocols to cope. Ray glanced out at the platform, and I figure straying to the incorrect protocol at the improper moment could strand you in the unsuitable era amid entities that don't belong. A bus horn blared faintly from afar. We both glanced at our watches. Mine read 12:33. Ray's showed 12:41, the 12:47 arrival. It's ahead of schedule, I noted. Ray blanched. By how much? I scanned the wall timetable. 14 minutes by my timepiece, 6 by yours. My guidelines warn against noting premature buses. Skip logging them, avoid staring, act oblivious. But mine, the standard protocol, insists on recording every bus at its slot to ensure routine function, offering aid to riders if required. We exchanged glances. What if we adhere to conflicting directives? I wondered. Ray's hands trembled. I suspect we're on the verge of discovering that. The vehicle emerged along the depot entrance, its beams cutting the night like probing rays. Yet its glide felt off, fluid, yet accelerated unnaturally, reminiscent of footage skipping frames. It halted at the platform with a hydraulic sigh that echoed both near and remote. "Stay put," Ray urged. He retreated toward the office entrance, steering clear of the glass. My guidelines demand remaining indoors, shunning windows, averting direct gaze. Yet, the official ones compelled me to document all arrivals for seamless ops, assisting folks as necessary. I got to my feet, heading for the platform exit. "Stop," Ray whispered sharply. "Hear me out. That ride isn't meant to halt here. Not in our layer. Acknowledging it risks fusing elements that must remain divided. Riders might be aboard, never. Early arrivals carry no souls. Just the bus panels parted." A shape stirred within, obscured by the dark glass. Overly lanky for a seated figure, unnaturally slender in build. I crossed onto the platform. Ray yelled from behind, but his words warped like submerged echoes, muffled and remote. The ground yielded strangely beneath me. The pavement felt yielding, fresh, akin to unset slabs. The fixtures above glowed an eerie azure instead of amber. I'd crossed into an alternate depot iteration. The form inside advanced to the exit. Its outline loomed, stretched, limbs folding at excessive points. Instinct deep in my mind howled to flee, to bolt, to vanish before that presence breached this semblance of existence on the landing. From behind, Ray materialized at the threshold. He gripped a pipe segment from the repair area, his visage locked in fearful resolve. "Retreat now," he bellowed. "Immediately." But his stare fixed past me on the bus entry. The entity began to exit. A limb, loosely termed. Something ashen and jointed grazed the slab. Ray charged ahead, lashing the pipe against the door controls. The clash rang out like fracturing chimes. The panel jammed, wedged midway. Wrong moment. Ray bellowed at the vehicle. The presence within. The structure around us. Wrong rotation. Unauthorized. Unauthorized. The entity withdrew. The panels sealed shut. The bus withdrew from the dock in that aberrant haste, surging away at unreal velocity, vanishing into the shadows past the perimeter glow. Ray slumped onto the platform, pipe clutched tight. He gasped as if after a grueling race. I remained rooted in place, struggling to comprehend the horror unfolding before me. "That actually happened," I muttered, more to myself than anything. Ray glanced up, tears glistening in his eyes. You stuck to your protocols. I adhered to mine. And between us, we nearly unleashed that abomination from the bus. Get it? Your guidelines would have had you aiding it. Mine would have kept me cowering. It was only us blending those approaches, you venturing out, me hunkering down, that nearly doomed us. I guided him back inside the office. His fingers trembled so violently he could scarcely grip the pipe. Quote 38. Quote I demanded. Quote 39. Quote. He placed the pipe on the table. Those protocols aren't for our safety. They're designed to trap horrors like that. But each set of rules applies to its own iteration of this depot. Mess them up by combining poorly and... He trailed off. He didn't have to elaborate. I eyed the open logbook on the desk. The following line stated, injured, first aid administered, see incident report. My watch read 12:56. That left us 41 minutes to determine what exactly would harm him, and if attempting to rescue him might shatter some essential barrier we'd better leave intact. Ray wouldn't budge from the office. He hunkered in the corner, pipe balanced on his lap, staring out the windows as if they might reveal an irreversible nightmare. The rush of adrenaline ebbed away, replaced by a quivering fatigue that aged him 2 decades in an instant. I brewed coffee using the relic of a machine, mostly to occupy my jittery hands rather than expecting us to touch the stuff. The pot sputtered and steamed, yielding a brew that resembled sludge more than sustenance. Tell me about your initial night on duty, I prompted. Last evening? What went down? Ray fell silent for what felt like ages. It started routine. A couple of buses arrived right on time. I handled repairs on the platform fixtures and swapped out wiring in the loading area. Though oddities cropped up. He hesitated. I caught whispers in the lounge when no one was around. Discovered my tools shifted positions in the bay, despite me remembering exactly where I'd placed them. And the clocks, he waved a hand dismissively. Just like this evening. Out of sync. Did you spot anybody unusual? No. Yet it seemed like I should have, like I'd stepped into spaces right after someone vacated them. That sensation hit home for me. I'd sensed it throughout the shift. The maintenance bay, I mentioned. Yeah. You been in there tonight? Ray shook his head. My instructions forbid entering during specific times, especially 1 to 3 a.m. The scribbled notes I discovered warn that if I notice anybody in the bay, I should hole up here in the office, that they aren't authorized to be present, so we're both meant to steer clear of it. Separate motives, identical outcome. Ray set his mug aside untouched. Suppose all these rules are sketching the identical anomalies, merely from varying perspectives, different duties, alternate realities, but all aimed at controlling the same glitches. I hadn't replied when the light stuttered. Not a random glitch from faulty circuits, but an intentional sequence. Off, on, off, on, off, resembling a code. Ray sprang up, clutching the pipe. That's unnatural, he muttered. Nothing here qualifies as ordinary. No, Jason, I mean, it's not a power issue. It's a message. The pattern repeated. I moved to the window facing the platform. The orange sodium lamps out there held steady, unaltered. Yet the fixtures in the lounge, glimpsed via the inner pane, pulsed in their separate cadence. Distinct pace. Unique beat. 2 distinct transmissions, I observed. Ray sidled up beside me. Christ, it's as if a pair of folks are shouting over each other. The platform illumination formed a sequence I nearly identified. Not letters exactly, but a rhythm, an echoing familiarity. The lounge responded with its counterpoint, clashing and muddying the signals. Abruptly, everything plunged into shadow. Amid the pitch black, a sound emerged, footfalls echoing from the maintenance bay, sturdy boots striking the floor, steady, advancing. Ray's directives insisted the bay stood vacant at this point. Mine claimed no legitimate presence belonged there. We both halted, paralyzed, weighing which guidelines to heed. The steps ceased right beyond the bay's entrance, the portal linking to our office via a brief hallway. A rap, 3 measured taps, courteous and official. "Hello?" A voice filtered through, subdued. "Anybody in there? I require assistance." Ray seized my arm, clamping down with bruising force. "Ignore it. Somebody could genuinely be hurt, but nothing authentic lurks in that space. Not during these hours, not on this rotation." The rapping resumed. "Please, I'm hurt. The bus. There was an accident on the bus. I can't locate the way out." I checked the logbook again. The notation persisted. 1:37 a.m. Ray injured. My watch indicated 1:24. "Ray?" I uttered cautiously. "What if that's you out there?" His hold on me eased. "What? What if that's some alternate version of you from another timeline, hurt by an event that either hasn't struck you yet or already did, based on the perspective?" Ray's complexion had gone pale as death. "If I swing that door open, your protocols insist the maintenance area ought to be deserted, yet you're picking up a voice echoing from inside. Sticking to those protocols means ditching your own self in peril. But ditching them could invite in an imposter, something masquerading as me." The voice rang out once more, now laced with raw urgency. "I know you're right there. I hear your voices. Please, blood's pouring out of me. Help." Suddenly, the lights blazed back to full intensity, overwhelming our eyes. The plea broke off abruptly. Ray trembled visibly. "We have to figure out what's lurking in there. Your protocols. Screw them." He edged closer to the bay entrance. "If that's really me, if I'm genuinely wounded inside, I can't simply abandon myself to perish." He yanked the door wide before I had a chance to intervene. The hallway stretched empty ahead, yet a trail of blood smeared the ground, recent, glistening, snaking out from the bay and halting right at our threshold, as if the injured party had dragged themselves this far before disappearing. Ray ventured into the passage, tracing the crimson path. I snatched the flashlight off the desk and tailed him. The maintenance bay loomed like a shadowy sanctuary, vaulted roof, bare rafters, machinery crouched in the corners resembling dormant beasts. The blood led straight to the middle of the floor, then ended abruptly. No one around, no origin point, just a puddle spreading over the concrete, I muttered. "Something's off here," Ray murmured. "This event's still in the future. Or maybe it's past and we're only now syncing up with it." He dropped to one knee near the stain, careful not to contact it. "This is genuine. Recent. It hasn't begun to congeal." I glanced at my watch. 1:31. Just 6 minutes shy of the log's prediction for Ray's injury. "We should get out of here," I urged. "Head back to the office, secure the doors, and wait it out." But Ray ignored me, his gaze fixed on a spot shrouded in gloom at the bay's distant edge. A door embedded in the wall, weathered steel coated in that dull institutional green. That wasn't there earlier, Ray stated. You certain? I've toiled in this space for years. I know it inside out. That door has no business being here. Yet there it stood, tangible and unmistakable, with a narrow pane at eye level. And beyond the glass, an interior light glowed steadily. Ray rose and headed straight for it. __quote, _42, __ I warned, though my words carried no conviction, no command. After all, I was already trailing him to the very thing I advised against. We arrived at the door side by side, and peering through the window revealed a cramped, sealed chamber crammed with file cabinets and racks, plus a figure hunched over paperwork at a desk. The individual glanced up. It was me. Not a doppelganger or mix-up in appearance, but precisely me, clad in identical attire, mirroring my weary demeanor. That other version of myself spotted us and leaped to their feet, slamming palms against the pane. Their lips shaped silent phrases we couldn't catch through the barrier. Get away. It's consuming you. It's devouring you both. Ray rattled the handle, locked tight. The duplicate me hammered the glass harder, features contorted in terror, jabbing a finger past us. We spun around. The blood no longer sat stagnant. It crept outward, expanding with purpose, etching shapes, perhaps runes or script in an alien tongue that stung the eyes to decipher. And amid the gear's shadows, eyes gleamed back at us. Several entities, elongated and malformed, biding their time. Ray lashed out with the pipe at the closest silhouette. It struck a firm mass that shrieked, not a beast's cry nor a person's, but a jarring blend of interference and rasping steel. The creature jerked back, but its companions advanced. I bolted for the hallway, Ray hot on my heels. In our wake, that anomalous door burst inward, and my duplicate's voice howled, "Not your shift! Wrong shift entirely! Flee to the—" The cry severed. We burst into the office and barricaded the entrance. Ray slumped against the partition, crimson seeping through his shirt sleeve from an injury that had materialized unseen. My watch read 1:37. The log entry had nailed it. First aid, I wheezed, rummaging drawers until a kit tumbled out. Ray gaped at his limb, and the gash resembling claws from digits overly extended, razor-edged, excessive in number. I sensed it, he murmured softly. The instant it grazed me, I experienced every iteration, every variation of shifts colliding simultaneously, every possible conclusion to this night. He met my eyes. In most, we don't make it. I bandaged his arm, fingers quivering too much for neat work. Beyond the walls, buses stirred through the night, pulling in ahead of schedule. Delayed, punctual, adhering to timetables from unseen dimensions. And deep within the depot, amid the fractures between shifts, my counterpart remained confined in that impossible chamber, desperate to alert us to the horror we'd already brushed against. The protocols offered no salvation. They outlined scenarios both actual and illusory at once. Adhering to them spelled our doom. Defying them did the same. The sole escape lay in figuring out which iteration of this night we were truly enduring, then hoping it was one we might live through. Ray's blood was seeping through the dressing quicker than expected. The cut wasn't severe. I'd wiped it clean and could inspect it plainly now, but the flow refused to halt, like his system had forgotten the basics of clotting, as though the laws of biology were up for debate in this spot. Quote 44, Ray replied, his tone resolute even as pain etched lines on his features. Quote 46, quote 47. He shut his eyes, slumping against the wall. Quote 48, quote Ray's gaze returned. He's not fleeing this nightmare. He's trapped inside it, looping through a variant of this very shift he can't finish or flee. The office seemed to shrink in that moment, walls inching nearer like the space itself was recalling its capacity for alteration. We must pinpoint the origin, I urged. What event shattered time here? With a feeble tilt of his head, Ray gestured at the filing cabinet. There's incident logs in there, old records. Dive into those first. I retrieved the dossier I'd spotted earlier and laid out the papers on the desk. Over 3 years, 6 workers on overnight duties, each detailing comparable oddities. I'd only glanced through them previously. This time I scrutinized every line for recurring themes. March 7th. Marcus Teague. Timetables collided. 2 buses pulling in at the identical berth at once. November 2nd. Sarah Chen. The radio echoed my own words back to me. I was cautioning against stepping into the repair area, yet I hadn't gone there yet. Wouldn't for a full hour. When the moment arrived, there lay a timepiece on the ground. My own. The very one still strapped to my arm. Every account detailed breaches in Time's fabric. Everyone concluded with identical official brush-offs. No breach of guidelines noted. No additional measures needed. Quote, 53 I observed. Quote, 54 I added. Quote, 55. Quote, 56 Ray suggested. Quote, 57. I delved further into the cabinet beyond personnel dossiers and mishap files, reaching a division marked Facility Management. The binder was bulky, marred by moisture, secured by a rubber band that broke at my touch. Within were blueprints, approvals, and audits spanning 4 decades. Tucked midway was a brittle, faded news article from 1987. Transit hub reopens following scheduling mishap disaster. Millbrook Depot, back in service today after a 7-day shutdown due to a routing glitch sparking numerous timetable clashes. On August 4th evening, a software fault directed vehicles from 6 routes to converge at the same instant, sparking chaos and throngs. 3 riders unaccounted for. Local authorities insist the vanishings bear no link to the glitch, pointing to proof the people departed the premises on their own. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore, 58, underscore, underscore, the piece quoted. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 59, underscore, underscore, remarked area transport, head Vernon Hayes. Quote 60. 3 riders missing, not deceased, absent because no remains turned up, or because none existed to recover. Quote 61. I recited out loud. Ray's lids were lowered, yet he hung on my words. Quantum superposition, layers of reality sharing one spot. The resolution didn't happen neatly. Leftover echoes of those merged timetables persist, unresolved. Various nights merging, bleeding together, with us caught in the overlap. I pressed on with the papers. Post-event, the depot saw major overhauls, major fixes to the bays, lounge zones, and repair sections. Scant specifics on the changes, just bills, licenses, and obscure jargon. But a notice from August 1987, issued by an outfit named Temporal Remediation Solutions, drew my attention. Deployment finished. Buffers for parallel timelines in place. Advise continued surveillance through guideline-driven measures to counter stability shifts. Frequent crew changes to avoid fixation on routines. Employees from various shift periods must never communicate or cross paths directly. They hadn't repaired the station at all. Instead, they'd isolated it, erecting barriers around the fractured timelines to stop them from leaking out and controlling the intersections to avoid the time distortions escalating to a dangerous level. Those guidelines weren't meant for protection. They functioned as isolation measures. And Ray and I had been breaking that strictest rule for hours by engaging with each other. "We're the issue," I murmured softly. Both of us present, adhering to guidelines from separate shifts. "We're forcing these timelines to blend together. The anomalies we've witnessed, the monsters, the whispers, represent the clashes of incompatible realities attempting to occupy the same moment." Ray lifted his eyelids. "Then one of us has to go. Or perhaps one of us was never truly present to begin with." We locked gazes. "Pull up the staff list," Ray suggested. "Find out who's officially on duty this evening." I accessed the timetable via the terminal, an outdated setup that required 3 full minutes to start up, showing data in glowing green letters against a dark backdrop. Night crew, November 13th. Dispatcher slot, empty. Maintenance, Raymond Costas. My role appeared as unoccupied. "I shouldn't be here," I stated. The statement rang empty. "Or maybe I shouldn't," Ray shot back. "That list might belong to my version of events or yours. We can't tell which reality it reflects." He had a point. Any clue we uncovered could be unreliable. I might originate from an alternate version of this evening. My wristwatch vibrated suddenly. A reminder I'd overlooked programming. 2:15 a.m. The night's second coach, coming from some unspecified origin, due to pull in right at this instant. I peered out the glass toward the loading area. The vehicle was parked there already, engine humming, entrance ajar. Its arrival had gone unnoticed by my ears. Ray hauled himself upright, wobbling yet resolute. The protocols mention this coach in conflicting ways. I retrieved the documents. Standard directives. Record every vehicle that pulls into its slot promptly. Scribbled notes. Skip logging for any that show up ahead of schedule. Ray's personal guidelines. Note arrivals that are punctual, but stay away from them entirely. It's right on time, I noted, even though our clocks display varying hours. But within certain timelines, this is precisely 2:15, so we record it. I'm unsure. Peering through the pane, I glimpsed the interior. 3 riders occupied isolated seats, motionless, staring ahead. As I observed, one swiveled to stare straight into the control room. Toward me. It was my double, the version I'd spotted confined in that anomalous chamber. They mashed their features against the vehicle's glass, lips forming silent phrases that I couldn't catch audibly yet instinctively grasped. "Stay off it." The next rider pivoted. It was Ray, his gaze filled with dread, head jerking side to side frantically. The final one rotated. It was Vic, my hiring supervisor, but his features were off, overly even, excessively balanced, resembling a snapshot of Vic instead of flesh and blood. Each of the trio mouthed frantic warnings without noise from within the coach. "That's no ordinary vehicle," Ray declared. "It's a gathering receptacle." And the realization hit me. The facility wasn't merely handling colliding timelines, it was extracting the duplicates. Whenever duplicate instances of the same individual overlapped during a single period, the mechanism gathered the surplus, tucked them into interstitial voids, and harnessed them to power the time stabilizers. The directives weren't shielding us from the damaged timelines. They ensured we remained oblivious to our role as fodder for the machine. The coach remained stationary on the dock, engine purring patiently like a hunter in wait. Visible through its panes, 3 iterations of familiar faces, or ones I ought to recognize, gesticulated mutely in panic. The pneumatic sigh from the entryway evoked respiration. Ray clutched the desk's border, his wounded limb smearing crimson prints across the surface. Neither of us can engage with that thing, but even recognizing it could initiate the harvest. Yet what if we're meant to engage? What if that's the way to halt this chaos? Or what if that seals our fate alongside them? The monitor glitched, fresh words materializing, unprompted by my input, as though the network itself replied to my thoughts. Timeline integrity. Urgent duplicate elimination needed. Numerous subjects under identical identifier. Harvest sequence engaged. It views us as duplicates, I explained, both occupying the same zone as multiples. Ray let out a harsh, acrid chuckle. "We qualify as such. I'm on maintenance duty. You're handling dispatch, yet only one overnight operative is allocated. The apparatus is attempting to determine the authentic one between us. Perhaps we're both legitimate. In that case, we'll both end up harvested." Beyond the glass, the coach's motor growled faintly. Not a roar, just a gentle rise in hum, signaling readiness to depart, passengers added or not. A noise from the lounge area whipped my head around. The access from the dock had swung wide, revealing a diminutive outline framed by the harsh orange glows. A kid, around 7 or 8, dressed in pajamas covered with cartoon figures, gripping a worn-out stuffed bunny. They lingered right beyond the entrance, scanning the lounge with the dazed bewilderment of someone who dozed off in one spot and awoke somewhere entirely different. "Hello?" The tone was tiny, laced with fear. "Where's my mommy?" Ray and I traded looks. "Hang tight," I told him, heading into the lounge. "Forget the protocols. A kid in trouble overrides everything." I entered the space, and the air turned icy, plunging at least 20 degrees cooler as the child tracked my advance. Their gaze stretched unnaturally wide, shadowed too deeply, catching glints from non-existent sources. "Hey, kiddo. Where'd you come from?" I kept my words soft, reassuring. "The bus." I nodded off, and by the time I stirred, the whole place was empty. The kid squeezed the bunny closer. "This ain't my destination. I need my mom." I crouched low, shrinking my presence to seem less imposing. "Emma." From behind, Ray's voice cut in, edged with caution. "Review those guidelines right away." I fished out the scribbled sheet and skimmed it fast. There it was, Rule 7, the one I'd glossed over earlier. No traveler ever arrives solo. Spot anyone isolated who says they stepped off a bus, and they're from some other origin. A chill seeped into my veins. "Emma," I uttered deliberately. "What do you call your bunny?" Her head canted in a way that nearly passed for normal, almost lifelike. Hey, just nosy, huh? No name for it. Doesn't require one. The speech stayed childish, yet the rhythm felt off, overly deliberate, too precise. Will you assist me? I rose and retreated toward the office. Sure. Hold on while I phone for help. Don't leave. She edged closer, pleading. I'm terrified of being by myself. One more step. The darkness, pooling near Emma, clashed with the ceiling fixtures. It stretched in odd directions, denser than possible. I'm starving, she added. Haven't had a bite in ages, not since the timetables shattered, since we ended up trapped here. Emma's grin stretched excessively broad. All of us. Every soul that rolled in that evening when the coaches converged at once. We've lingered ever since, biding our time. So famished. Her shape wavered. Opaque one instant, ghostly the next, then solid anew beyond that petite frame. And more were emerging into the lounge. Folks of all ages and genders, clad in outfits from bygone periods. All frozen in place, all fixing me with stares that shimmered with unearthly glows. Just 3. Like in that news piece. But now, scores of them. You're no writers, I declared. Emma's head swiveled the opposite direction. We used to be prior to getting wedged in the void. These days we're mere imprints, resonances. Famished resonances. They advanced in unison. I bolted back to the office, barricaded the door, and secured the bolt. Peering through the pane, I saw them crowding the barrier. Emma at the forefront, still holding the bunny, still beaming. They won't break through, Ray muttered, though doubt laced his tone. This room's protected. It must be. The bulbs stuttered. Emma's words seeped under the frame, subdued yet distinct. __quote _81 __. The coach idles out there. It demands boarders. Either exit and climb aboard, or the child let out a giggle, or we'll enter. That isn't the protocol, I yelled in reply. You can't compel a pickup. Can't we? Emma leaned into the window harder. The guidelines are crumbling. Excessive convergence, far too many variants, the framework's buckling. Before long, no barriers left, no divisions. It all unfolds simultaneously. Ray hunched over the terminal, flicking through displays. Found an admin bypass, crisis measure for total chronology breakdown. What's its function? It imposes closure. Compels the network to select one event sequence as canon. Wipes out every clashing path. He faced me, pale as death. Even clashing individuals. How to activate it? A person must consent to the transport willingly, board the vehicle, and seal the loop. With a definite offering in place, the mechanism can realign, folding in the rest of the divergences. Realization crashed over me like an Arctic wave. One of us boards that ride. Exactly. And the one who does fades into an echo. Just like those out there. Sustenance for the machine. Our eyes met. Ray bled steadily, fading fast. Me? I wasn't slated here per the roster. An irregularity, a flaw. Perhaps I was spectral already. The horn blared, a prolonged, demanding blast echoing the Emma's plea. Decide. Immediately. The bus departs in 60 seconds, filled or empty. But if it rolls out riderless, our patience ends. The shapes in the lounge shifted, shedding their mortal shells, stretching into spindly jointed forms. The horrors from the initial coach, the ones that maimed Ray. Once ordinary travelers, now twisted entities, confined and ravenous in the liminal gaps, fed by the chaos of fractured time. "I'll do it," I volunteered. "No." Ray pushed to his feet unsteady. "I'm wounded deep, leaking life. My path's concluding regardless. You can't assume that." "Of course I do. I've sensed it ever since the maintenance bay incident. That creature's touch confirmed it for me." He slipped off his watch and extended it toward me. "Here, take it. Hold on to the true timeline. Avoid getting disoriented in the chaos. Ray, this is my decision. Allow me to follow through." He headed for the exit. The shadowy forms in the lounge shifted aside, forming a clear route to the loading dock and the waiting bus. Ray paused at the doorway, glancing over his shoulder. Survival was never the point of those guidelines. It was always about selecting the reality where you'd meet your end. "I'm picking this path, the one where I rescue somebody." He crossed onto the platform. Emma and the rest trailed after him in a solemn line, moving to the vehicle at last content. Ray boarded the bus. From the glass panes, I watched him settle into a spot, watched the spectral shapes crowd in beside him. The entrance sealed shut. The vehicle departed. Ray's expression showed through the pain, serene at last, accepting. As soon as the bus cleared the dock, the world jolted. Existence realigned sharply, like a fractured limb mending. Every clock aligned perfectly. 3:17 a.m., precisely on the mark. At the same instant, the chill evened out. The lounge stood vacant, ordinary again, with merely vinyl seats and worn linoleum. The monitor displayed one notice: timeline integrity reestablished, duplicate eliminated, closure achieved. Ray's toolkit remained in the office corner, crimson smears marking the ground, yet Ray himself was absent. Was he ever truly present, or merely the extra element, the iteration meant to vanish? Perhaps his act of giving was simply the cosmos fixing a flaw. I had no answers. No way to find them, for that's the terror inherent here. Reality's truth stays hidden until a death reveals it. I dropped into the chair and flipped open the ledger. My own script filled the pages, detailing Ray and this evening's chaos. But flipping further, the upcoming logs had vanished. Empty sheets only. Something had shifted. Through my actions, Ray's, or our shared effort. This sequence of time belonged to me alone now, for better or worse. The terminal fell silent, unlike the tension-filled hush of the previous hours. No impending dread, just pure stillness, devoid of any noise. I remained at the control station as the hours advanced toward dawn. Ray's timepiece weighed down my pocket alongside mine, their ticks offset like rival pulses. I had made it through. Ray had not. Those stark truths lingered in my thoughts, defying any logical tie. The ledger stayed spread out, my words chronicling occurrences now fixed in history, sealed in one unbroken chain. I'd observed time's defiances, collisions of worlds clashing and diverging, entities beyond reason. And with that, it concluded, settled. Existence returned to its straight path. But then, at 4:22 a.m., the radio buzzed awake. Night dispatch, central here, verifying dock readiness for dawn service. The tone differed from earlier, detached, routine, genuine. I grabbed the handset. Docks open. Overnight duties wrapped up smoothly, no issues. A brief silence followed. Acknowledged. Our logs note the 215 arriving with 3 riders documented. Verify if they exited. My grip clenched the device. The 215 departed vacant. 0 riders got off. Extended quiet. Curious. Data indicates 3 scans on exit, suggesting disembark at your stop. Double-check the lounge? I peered out the glass. The lounge was deserted. Negative. Nobody around. Huh? The speaker hesitated. I'll flag it for inspection. Likely a glitch in the scanner. Common with outdated gear. The line went dead. I froze in place. 3 riders documented. Perhaps the 3 phantoms that shadowed Ray aboard, or some other anomaly. The network's administrative gears churned onward, logging anomalies as trivial faults. No breach noted, no follow-up needed. I rose, compelled to pace, to convince myself the station felt ordinary, secure, grounded once more. I crossed the lounge. Seats and linoleum. Nothing more. No hidden threats. I inspected the dock. Pavement, fixtures, vacant space. I pushed open the maintenance room door. Fixtures ignited on their own. The space appeared standard. Implements, gear, tables, no stains, no anomalous portal at the end. No trace Ray had occupied it, save his kit back in the office. The crimson lingered on the dressing I'd applied to his wound. As I turned to go, something caught my eye. Etchings on the wall obscured by a steel rack, faint marks gouged into the stone with a pointed tool. I tugged the rack aside. Scores of names incised in the surface, some new, others faded over years, each paired with a date. Marcus Teague, March 7th, Sarah Chen, November 2nd, David Corman, July 15th, and lowest, edges crisp and new, Raymond Costas, November 13th. Not only Ray, but every one of them. All those individuals listed in the incident logs, every overnight staffer who'd flagged weird time distortions, every colleague who'd bailed abruptly or vanished without a trace. They'd each opted for the identical path. They boarded one iteration or another of that bus. The system had gathered them all. This depot had spiraled into severe temporal chaos before. This was merely the most recent loop. Footsteps echoed from the office. I spun around, bracing for emptiness, for lingering auditory ghosts, for my mounting suspicions. Instead, a woman lingered in the threshold, around 35, dressed in sharp business attire, clutching a clipboard and sporting a company badge labeled Regional Operations Temporal Remediation Solutions. Impressive, she remarked. Few ever locate that wall. I remained silent. You're questioning your own authenticity, she added, glancing at her notes. That's typical. Rest assured you are genuine. You finished the shift. You're the core variant from the main sequence. Well done. And, Ray? Raymond Costas? She skimmed her documents. Ah, right, he served as the duplicate in this iteration. His forfeiture balanced the convergence. A streamlined fix, far tidier than others we've handled. He was human. He represented a possibility, just as you did, as do all of us here. Her smile surfaced, but it stayed surface level. This place operates amid constant time turbulence. It's beyond repair. The original event proved too devastating, so we oversee it. Cycle personnel in and out. We track dangerous intersections, permit the mechanism to realign via willing submissions. You permit deaths. We permit realities to unravel. At times that entails the lives within them. She jotted something down. You'll get relocated. Day crew at a standard site. Comprehensive perks. 0 time paradoxes. Routine protocol after a solid containment. You've merited it. And should I mention this? Her grin expanded. Anyone hearing of time glitches in a volatile hub? Textbook signs of monoxide poisoning, burnout, delusion, fatigue. Tragic. We'll ensure you receive proper care. She placed a form on the desk. Relocation docs prepped, signature pending. Consider it. Day hours, everyday routine. You can erase all this from memory. Most do. Eventually. She headed for the exit, then halted. By the way, the watch. The one in your pocket that doesn't belong to you. I'll take it. Corporate asset. Ray handed it to me. Raymond Costas never clocked in officially, no payroll trace. Thus, no belongings to pass along. She extended her hand. I could resist. I could deny her. I could cling to this tangible token that Ray had been real, that he'd counted, that his decision had spared me. But deep down, I knew the outcome. I retrieved Ray's watch and dropped it into her grasp. She inclined her head, pleased, and departed. Alone in the office, I watched as pale dawn seeped through the panes, muted and chill. The relocation forms lay there, offering release, offering ordinariness, offering a way to abandon this nightmare. I pictured Ray striding toward that bus with quiet resolve. I recalled the engravings in the repair area. I mulled over the protocol sheets, each variant, each attempt to chart the unchartable from varied perspectives. And I reflected on my dispatch voice over the airwaves earlier. Glad you made it this time. This time, hinting at prior rounds, alternate paths, alternate fatalities from diverging decisions. How often had I endured this graveyard shift and failed to endure? How many loops saw me harvested rather than Ray? How many saw me as the expendable element requiring closure? My phone vibrated. I'd blanked on its existence, on the world beyond these walls. A message from an unknown sender, quote 112, but sunrise arrives daily. The real puzzle? Will you remain yourself come dawn? M.T. Marcus Teague, the ex-staffer eternally fleeing, depot shadows haunting every snapshot. I eyed the relocation forms. I scanned the log where my script outlined occurrences now fused into one narrative. I checked my watch. 5:47 a.m., shifts close at 6, 13 minutes left. Lights stuttered faintly, almost imperceptibly, timepieces aligned. My wrist, the wall dial, the screen, 5:47 a.m., precisely, impeccably, excessively so. The radio hissed with my voice. Night dispatch, central acknowledging platform check. I gaped at it. I hadn't keyed anything. The transmission pressed on. Quote 114 My words from before. Verbatim. Yet broadcasting live, as though I were voicing it, or as if a parallel me from a parallel strand uttered them anew. A bus rumbled into the lot. I reviewed the roster. Nothing scheduled this late. From the window, the bus came into sharp focus under the faint glow of early light. Within it, seated apart in their rows, were 3 figures. One resembled Ray, another looked just like me. The third was a stranger, their features etched with recent tears, fingers marked by some shadowy substance. All of them stared straight toward the office, locking eyes with me. The doors hissed open. I remained rooted in place, struggling to process the impossible scene, to force it into the neat, fixed world I'd believed was finally settled and whole. My phone vibrated once more. The mechanism doesn't erase duplicates. It hoards them. Escape isn't possible. You're archived, poised for the upcoming loop, the impending collision, the moment it demands sustenance again. Enter the interstitial void. The office door swung inward. I spun around. There stood Ray, whole and unscathed, gripping his toolbox. Quote 115. Quote he greeted. Quote 116, quote. His expression held puzzlement. Quote 117, quote. And in that instant, clarity hit. The loop hadn't concluded. It never would. Ray's earlier offering hadn't broken the pattern. It had merely reset it. Here I was once more, or perhaps perpetually, locked in this eternal recurrence. The depot operated beyond the flow of hours, ensnaring every employee in an endless repetition of decisions, fatalities, and spectral remnants. Gazing at Ray, this fresh, oblivious iteration who hadn't yet faced harm, hadn't yet yielded his life, who was on the verge of uncovering the directives, the time-warping intersections, and the anomalies that defied existence, I weighed my options. I could alert him, spill every detail, attempt to shield him, or adhere to the rhythm, allow events to unfold, cling to the slim chance that this round might diverge somehow. My watch read 5:47 a.m. It had read the same for the previous 5 minutes. Dawn refused to break. It always did. The instant dragged on, elastic and worn. Ray lingered in the threshold, his countenance expectant yet hesitant. I hovered, suspended across eras, dilemmas, renditions of an interminable evening. Then a shift occurred. Not audible, but a sensation akin to balance restoring, emerging from submerged depths. Ray's eyes fluttered, bewilderment flashing across him. Quote 118. Quote he murmured, shaking it off. Quote 119, quote. He stepped inside, positioning his toolbox in the familiar corner, the spot where I'd witnessed it previously, where it perpetually resided. Yet no blood seeped from his limb. No wrapping bound it. The wound was absent or impending, or it had afflicted some alternate ray in a parallel run. My watch advanced. 5:48 a.m. The clock resumed its march. I gathered the transfer documents from the surface, creased them neatly, and slipped them into my pocket. No signature, no shredding. They lingered in the ambiguous flux that defined this place. Equally tangible and illusory, pertinent and void. Wrapping things up? I informed Ray. Shift's concluding. You're commencing. Yeah, debut night or so they say. He knit his brow. That's odd. Feels like I've done this already, but don't chase the memory, I cut in. It'll only complicate things. He studied me intently, and in his gaze flickered not full recall, but an echo of collective ordeal, of happenings too fractured for straightforward telling, dwelling beyond sequential tales. You get it, he ventured. This spot's off. Sticking to protocols keeps you breathing. Spotting duplicate guidelines? They're valid and invalid in tandem. I retrieved the sheets from my pocket. The standard version, the scrawled one, the set Ray would someday hand over or already had or might withhold indefinitely. I placed them on the desk. Go through everyone, then craft your personal code. Rely on your gut over all else. And if I skip that? He mused. Visions surfaced. Ray aboard the bus, serene in acceptance. My echo on the comms from unlived paths. The etchings on the repair wall. You weave into the weave eternally. Ray lifted the pages, his unease mounting as he skimmed. "Gotta head out," I announced. "Dawn's here, I suppose." "Sort of." I exited the office swiftly, dodging his reply, evading another entanglement that might spiral into identical insights and offerings. The lounge lay deserted, routine, seats secured in orderly lines. The paper on one cushion bore the current mark, November 14th. I'd outlasted the witching hour, the rift in time, emerging into fresh daylight. Yet as I shoved through the entrance into the lot, into the muted haze before sunrise, unease gripped me. A misalignment, a subtle dislocation, as if crossing from one film stage to a near twin, altered in illumination, directed by another hand. My vehicle sat in its spot, yet simultaneously offset 15 feet leftward in an alternate bay. Each form equally vivid. I perceived them overlaid. I opted for the nearer vehicle, the one parked in my usual spot, and slid behind the wheel. The motor fired up without issue. An unfamiliar station blasted old-school rock through the speakers. The navigation unit displayed the right day and hour, 6:04 a.m. I'd survived the handover. I pulled away from the lot and merged onto the rural highway leading to Millbrook. In the reflection of the rear view, the terminal shrank into the distance. A low-slung block of concrete, plain and easy to overlook, the sort of spot you'd breeze by endlessly without a second glance. Yet there, in the glass, another iteration lingered too. The station with erratic illuminations, vehicles pulling in and out at an absurd pace, and shadowy forms on the loading area that defied any notion of staff or travelers. I averted my gaze from the mirror, fixing my attention on the stretch of pavement before me, on widening the gap between myself and whatever lurked there. The trip to the center of town lasted a standard 20 minutes, utterly ordinary. I overtook a few vehicles, paused at signals, observed folks kicking off their day, strolling with pets, inspecting letterboxes, clocking in for dawn factory duties, everyday existence, the sort outlined in my relocation documents. I pulled up near a roadside eatery, stepped in, and requested a mug of Joe plus a morning meal. The server was upbeat, griping about the climate while inquiring if I was just transiting or a regular. I replied that I was merely passing by. It rang true in the moment. As I sat awaiting my order, I glanced at my cell. Nothing from Marcus Teague, no overlooked rings from those blank hours in my mind. Only routine pings, junk mail, headlines, a nudge for a dental visit I'd blanked on scheduling. Proof of an existence beyond the station, beyond those time warps, beyond the nightmare. My plate came. I chewed through it on autopilot, flavors registering dimly, while urging myself to accept that escape was mine. Still, a nagging sense persisted that all wasn't right. Not perilous, not urgent peril, just off-kilter. As if I occupied a spot marginally shifted from my proper place, immersed in a world that nearly matched, but fell short. Reaching for my billfold to settle up, I discovered an item I had no recollection of adding, a simple white card, logo-free, bearing only digits and one phrase. When you recall the forgotten, dial here. TRS, Temporal Remediation Solutions, the outfit overseeing the terminal, permitting fatalities to uphold barriers that viewed lives as mere statistical extras. I ought to have discarded it on the spot. Instead, I slipped it back into the fold. Post-meal. I headed to the site noted in the relocation docs. A routine bus hub on the edge of another community, 60 miles from Millbrook. Daytime bustle, glaring fixtures, surveillance lenses. Workers in high-vis gear upholding timetables that held logical water. I conferred with an overseer oblivious to time glitches, odd rosters, or offerings. She walked me through the lounge, routing protocols and staff manual. All cataloged, tidy, prosaic. Quote, 133, quote, she noted. Quote, 134. Quote, I agreed, grinned, uttered the right responses, all while dismissing how her wall clock read 8:47 a.m. against my wristwatch's 8:52 a.m. A 5-minute skew mirroring what I'd spotted back at the depot. 3 weeks elapsed. I handled the daylight hours at the fresh site. I logged paperwork, synced transport, sipped lousy brew alongside colleagues venting over commonplace gripes. Gridlock, games, trashy shows. I leased a unit in a generic housing block, surrounded by acquaintances who offered courteous dips of the head without prying. Standard routine, the very normalcy I'd craved upon accepting the graveyard watch at that obscure stop. Yet the time distortions trailed me like phantoms. Subtle at the outset. A broadcast covering an incident I recalled from just the day prior, though the segment claimed it unfolded 2 days back. A chat with my boss alluding to a session I had no memory of. Yet my planner bore a bold entry deeming it done. Voids, mismatches, instants when chronology faltered. I chalked it up to tension, faulty recall, the psychic residue from that depot vigil. I resisted dialing the card's line. Then, on December 4th, my initial earnings from the gig arrived. The recipient's name was off. Not wildly so, not an utter stranger, merely altered. Where Jason Chen ought to appear, it listed Jason C. Teague. Teague, the ex-worker who'd etched his moniker into the repair alcove, who'd fired off enigmatic texts, who'd ensnared himself in an endless cycle, forever circling a hub that haunted every snapshot. I fixated on the stub for 20 minutes straight. Then I rang the accounting office. Quote, 135, quote, the rep apologized. Quote, 136, quote. We've encountered some glitches with the updated payroll setup, the clerk explained. Let me generate a proper check for you immediately. Could you verify your complete legal name? I repeated it for her. That's precisely what's listed here, she replied, sounding puzzled. I can't explain the mix-up at all. It's downright odd. She sent over the replacement check. This time the name was spot on, yet the account digits were off by a couple, sufficient to route my funds straight into a stranger's hands, someone with the initials MT. I held on to both checks without cashing them. Later that evening, I dug out the business card and dialed the listed number. It rang thrice before picking up. No hello, no intro, merely a voice. You're dealing with integration drift. What exactly is that? It signifies that the timeline you're in isn't entirely solid. You're shifting across variants of your own existence. At times, you're Jason Chen. At others, Jason Teague. Occasionally, you're nothing, a mere ripple of chance poised to solidify. A brief silence followed. It strikes survivors now and then. The depot resists releasing its hold. How can I resolve this? You can't. You cope with it. You decide. Each decision you render collapses possibilities, erases other paths, and tethers you to one reality. The steadier your decisions, the firmer your footing. And if I waver, then you end up like Marcus, lingering across every timeline, yet in none, a spectral echo in the quantum haze. The call cut off abruptly. I lingered in my apartment, encircled by signs of an ordinary existence. The couch I'd selected, the photos I'd mounted, the habits I'd built, and pondered which actions truly counted, which turns would ground me. Yet every possibility appeared just as legitimate and just as futile. I might remain here, or relocate elsewhere. Stick with this position or seek another. Attempt to recall the depot's events or compel myself to erase them. Every route pointed ahead. None carried more weight than the rest. On December 9th, a parcel arrived. No sender's details, only my name, right for once, and my unit number on an enclosed note scrawled in ink, identical to the one I'd discovered at the depot. The tight pressing script, the familiar smudges, except these guidelines varied. Integration upkeep after the depot. Doubt any dates jotted by outsiders. Rely solely on your recall of the order. If timepieces clash, pick the hour that jars you. That's the strand fighting to endure. Should anybody address you by an unfamiliar name, respond regardless. Their glimpse in another facet. Avoid dispute. Maintain a log. Record daily occurrences. In cases of clashing recollections, favor the log over your thoughts. The depot persists within your reality. Return if you must. But each trip erodes your unity. Spotting your reflection mismatched in motion? Hold the gaze. That self requires recognition to persist. You're not insane. You're simply authentic across multiple layers. I scanned the note thrice, then set it ablaze. Not from disbelief. I trusted it utterly. And that certainty unnerved me beyond any rift in time. Adhering to these directives meant embracing a splintered, shaky, multifaceted world. It meant conceding I could embody Jason Chen, Jason Teague, or their entangled blend. It meant acknowledging the depot had irreparably warped my bond with sequential time. I yearned for ordinariness. I longed to obliterate the past. I ached to endure till dawn, and have dawn signify arrival. Yet that evening, visions of the depot haunted my sleep. Ray boarding the coach, my own gaze from the control room, the fork that rescued me while cursing him, or vice versa, or spawned dual strands where both fates held. Within the reverie, I stood in the repair area, eyeing the etchings on the bulkhead. My inscription appeared, Jason Chen, November 13th. But the date flickered. December 4th, December 9th, December 13th. Each dusk I'd outlasted post-departure etched itself anew, as though departure never occurred, as if I'd been gathered alongside the rest. This everyday routine merely a tale I spun, while the endless coach ferried me through the voids. I jolted awake at 3:17 a.m., the precise instant the depot had steadied following Ray's offering. My space lay shrouded, still, unremarkable. Yet from the window a transit halt gleamed opposite, absent when I'd settled in. A halt illogical, since no lines serve this district. As I observed, a vehicle approached, its root panel empty, panels parted. No passengers embarked, none disembarked. Still I sensed its vigilance, sensed its awareness of me, sensed its recall that I belonged elsewhere. Elsewhen? Elsewherein. The entrance lingered ajar for precisely 60 seconds, then sealed. The vehicle departed. I glanced at my wrist. 3:17 a.m. My device, 3:17 a.m. The bedside timer, 3:17 a.m. Everything aligned flawlessly. Yet, it all felt off. I rose from the bed, headed to my desk, grabbed some paper and a pen, and began drafting fresh guidelines. These weren't the instructions handed down to me, nor the ones that had either rescued or ruined Ray. They weren't even the directives that arrived in that mysterious package. No. These were my personal guidelines for navigating a existence where time could be skipped and truth was up for debate. Jason's Guidelines. Edition 1. Though you can't quite tell which iteration of yourself made it through, perhaps everyone did, or maybe not a single one. The depot exists for real, and the events there truly unfolded. Refuse to let anybody talk you out of that. Ray took a stand. Respect it by living with intention, not by chance. As timelines split apart, pick the path where you remain true to yourself, no matter who that turns out to be. Avoid returning to the depot, yet hold on to its memory. It's woven into your core now. Each individual you encounter could be navigating their own variant of the present. Show compassion. Everyone's wrestling with their personal chronology. Dawn arrives in due time, but it's your call to define its significance. I creased the sheet, slipped it into my wallet beside the business card I'd kept despite everything, and reached a resolution. I'd commit to this timeline, this position, this living space, this facet of my identity, not simply because it rang truer than alternate selves, but because here I'd opted to create my own directives rather than obey imposed ones, and I'd confronted the terror head-on instead of burying it. This was the reality where I'd evolved into someone who endured not through betraying others, but by grasping that endurance was fleeting, impermanent, forever hinging on the forthcoming decision. Come morning, the bus stop lingered unchanged, illogical in its presence, poised in anticipation. Yet I bypassed it, heading straight to my vehicle, commuting to the job, and diving into yet another shift. And should I catch glimpses of myself in passing glass, dressed in subtly altered outfits, pursuing marginally varied paths, I'd offer a subtle acknowledgement to those echoes and press onward. That's the essence of outlasting the depot. Not fleeing its grasp, but recognizing that certain locales never fully release you. They merely instruct you to bear the dread along your journey, to sustain it through deliberate actions, to transform into an entity that thrives amid the gaps between past realities and potential futures, and to label that fragmented, hazy being a life. Dawn repeats endlessly, over and over. All you need is to select which dawn belongs to you and trust that your selection sustains enough authenticity to claim the following one. End.